Number 4, we are graphing a parabola. A parabola is a U shape that you get when you graph a quadratic function. When we graph a parabola, we're going to make our table. And on these ones, we don't have any adding and subtracting. That tells me that my middle of my graph is going to be at 0. The middle of most graphs are at 0. It's just that usually we have pluses and minus somethings in there and it moves them over. So what we're going to do in our table is we're going to plot 5 points. What they call the vertex, the middle, and then 2 points on each side. So we're going to have 2, 1, 0, -1, and -2. And we're going to use those 5 points in our graph. And then basically what we're going to do is just fill that in for x and find our values. So filling in our table, we're going to do -5 times 2 squared for our first point. So 2 squared, because I got to do my exponent first. 2 squared is 4. -5 times 4, where the 4's are going to cancel out. 1 times -5, I get -5. If I'm really bad with fractions, I just put it in just like I wrote it down to start with. -5 parentheses 2 squared equals. Should get -5. Then I'm going to have to do my -5 times my 1 squared. Well, 1 squared is going to stay 1, right? And 1 times -5 going to be -5. Then I'm going to do -5 times 0 squared. Well, 0 squared is going to be 0, right? And 0 times -5 still going to be 0. Then I have to do my -5 times -1 squared. So when you think about squaring a -1, a -1 times a -1 would make that +1. 1 times -5 is -5. And then I'm going to do my -5 times my -2 squared. Again, when I square that -2, -2 times -2, it becomes +4. The 4's are going to cancel, so I just get the -5 answer. So when you look at that table of my graph, because I know it's going to look like a U, notice the 2 and the -2 got the same answer, the 1 and the -1 got the same answers. Now you do have to use the plot point tool with the fraction. I'm just going to estimate them. 2 -5, 2 over, down 5. 1 -5. -5 would be -1 1/4. So I'm just going to go a little bit farther down than my first line there and just estimate it. But the computer will put it on there. You'll use that little tool that looks sort of like this, and it'll say plot point anywhere, and you type in your ordered pair. 0, 0, that's right in the middle. -1 and -5, and then -2 and -5. So your dots should be lined up across from each other. When you hit the graph tool, it's going to, in this case, look like an upside down U, because your coefficient was negative, so it flipped it upside down instead of right side up. But will look something sort of like that. So if I am graphing the parabola 1/2 x squared, again when I graph these, I'm always just going to use 2, 1, 0, -1, and -2. Because there's no shifting to my graph. So if you do 1/2 times 2 squared, what do you get? You get 2. 2 squared is 4, and half of 4 is 2. 1/2 times 1 squared. One half times 1 squared is going to be a half. 1 squared is 1, and 1 times a half is still 1/2. 1/2 times 0 squared. 0. 0 times anything, 0. 1/2 times negative 1 squared. It's going to be positive 1/2, because when you square that negative 1, it becomes positive. And 1/2 times negative 2 squared, positive 2. Negative 2 squared is a positive 4, and half of 4 is 2. So that I can plot my points. 2, 2, 1 only goes up to 1/2, 0, 0, negative 1 goes up to 1/2, and negative 2 goes up to 2. And this one, because it had a positive coefficient in front of my x squared, goes upwards instead of downwards. Looks something sort of like that. So, number 6. Same thing, graphing my parabola using 2, 1, 0, negative 1, and negative 2 into my negative 3/2 x squared. So negative 3/2 times 2 squared. Negative 6, yep. 2 squared is 4. Then the 2 cancels with the 4 2 times, and 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Negative 3/2 times 1 squared. Just going to be negative 3/2, exactly, because if I do 1 squared, it stays 1, and 1 times whatever's in front gives me whatever's in front, right? Negative 3/2 times 0 squared. 0. 0 times anything is 0. Negative 3/2 times my negative 1 squared. It's still negative 3/2. And negative 3/2 times my negative 2 squared. Negative 6. So those match up, and my 0, of course, is in the middle. So 2, negative 6. 1 and negative 1/2 would be negative 3/2. 0, 0, negative 1 and negative 1/2, and negative 2 and negative 6. And again, the coefficient was negative, so my parabola goes upside down. And there's my graph. So 7, 8, and 9 then are going to do a cubic function instead of a squared function. So they look